In the USA, something we have been taught to trust has been hijacked and has been killing millions of people for more than 40 years. People shouldn't be killed for buying a home. People shouldn't be killed for becoming parents. People shouldn't be killed for being kids. But this is exactly what is happening. Some call it paper terrorism. It comes from what was a dark tradecraft, but has become out of control, murderous gambling games, dealing for death, being played by imposters who have hijacked parts of the USA's courthouses from sea to shining sea. If parts of what I'm going to share with you make you feel terrified, that is a good thing. Lean into it, no matter how small you think you are, because that means you have the ability to conquer this murderous game with us, for all of us. I'm going to tell you why the number of conquerors is growing every day, everywhere, in every way. Be brave, be strong, be smart, because you are, okay? Remember, on TikTok, if you long press the screen, an option will pop up to clear the screen and increase the playback speed so you can get this 30-minute invitation to the greatest party in the history of the globe in less than 15 minutes. You can also find a direct YouTube link to this at thegreatamericanrescue.com, channel Govy Wovey. What has been happening in the USA's courthouses for the past 40 years are the terrifying effects of a psychosis that is an invasion of mind and nation. Not only is it responsible for all the terrors in the USA, it is responsible for all the terrors around the globe, and I'm going to tell you why. This psychosis divides and conquers with a dark funnel-shaped spectrum of terror that begins with dark altruism. From there, it alienates people from themselves and from each other with false invalidation. It does this by tightening this funnel of darkness around innocent children with false fears, false guilt, false shame, and we are all children. There are more than 70 other terrors that are all petulant, false validation-seeking veiled confessions as part of this dark funnel. It all stays camouflaged behind the visible terrors it spawns, publicly and privately, into infinitely more dark funnels if awareness, intervention, and advocacy are not introduced. I refer to it all as gothling. Those who are in the three various but rescuable stages of the terrors of being alienated from themselves and others are gothopaths, undiagnosed gothopaths, or living undiagnosed victims of gothopaths. When a living undiagnosed victim, or LUV, falls for the trick of using their pain to justify hurting others, they become an undiagnosed gothopath, or UG. When an UG refuses to conquer those dark false mongerings with the brighter light of awareness, intervention, and advocacy, they fall into becoming a gothopath. As the gothopath falls deeper and deeper into the funnel, they get closer and closer to committing crimes that they may not be able to return from, and that may bring death or prison to them. These crimes include murder of anyone, even children, allowed murder of anyone, even children, or using children as shields, just as Goethel in the story of Rapunzel did. That hidden metaphor involving that character in that story from more than 100 years ago is the namesake of gothling. Of the dozens of other dark funnels that are part of gothling, some of the gothopaths' terrorizing funnels include gang stalking, gang framing, and gang gaslighting. Some of an UG's dark funnels include projecting, dismissing, and virtue signaling. Some of a love's deceptive funnels include the false labels of anxiety, depression, self-destructive, and anything and everything else that is part of the imposters profiteering off pain by perpetuating these misdiagnoses as one disorder after another, rather than exploring and acknowledging what a person is really suffering from. In addition to gothling, a symptom of environment with imposter parts of generational, familial, and regional cultures playing dark roles is another nice way to describe these very far from nice terrors. False nobility, baiting, hooking, antagonizing, provoking for a dark reaction, and trauma bonding are just some of the other dark cycles of these mal-reciprocating dark funnels. Like veiled confessions, trauma bonding, also known as love bombing or paddleballing, is an insidious darkness in all the dark funnels, as it hijacks love by tricking and alienating everyone in the funnel into believing that love is that darkly self-serving, darkly superficial, darkly self-destructive addiction to the dark, false cycle of hurt, heal, hurt, heal, hurt, heal. You haven't heard about this psychosis, this invisible invasion of mind and nation, and the hijacking of the USA's courthouses for a few reasons. First is because most victims are dead. With most victims dead, millions of stories have been silenced, so there isn't any subject matter to study and teach about at universities. That is an incessantly effective truth of this spectrum of terror. Before now, these parts of these universities were left to regurgitate what the imposters wanted them to regurgitate to perpetuate the imposters' invasion, so that's what they did. A dark deception of these imposter parts of these universities is that what they regurgitate is very much the opposite of good or complete or comprehensive, even though they charge a tuition for what they regurgitate. The second reason you haven't heard of this before is that for victims who don't die quickly enough from being provoked into the dark reaction of death from suicide, death from stress, or death through self-medication with drugs or alcohol, as the imposters deceptively and intentionally try to make happen, they are then baited and hooked in other ways to be falsely imprisoned with or without a hearing. A peculiar percentage of those millions of victims then die in jail or prison under one illusion or another. In one of many other dark twists, inside or outside of jail, it must also be questioned how many suicides were really murders committed by the dark networks of imposters, but then disguised as suicides to keep the imposters' dark secrets hidden. And so you know, when it comes to jails and prisons, regardless of the state's name on it, for the past 40 years, all prisons targeting all regions and races are secretly projecting privatized, profiteering prisons, relying on virtue signaling, false nobility, and stolen valor to stay camouflaged, not just the billion-dollar private prisons that came about in 1983 to project, perpetuate, and profiteer off cultural genocide by targeting certain regions and races with mass abductions. The profiteering parts of the imposters' media, those imposter parts of those universities, and imposter politicians are only part of this reason why you haven't heard of this before, though. This is because the terrifying truth is that the death cash from these imposters' murderous games of dealing for death in the USA's hijacked courthouses adds up to hundreds of billions of dollars stolen from us or our loved ones every year with these deceptive backdoor gambling room keys. These piles of cash on the imposters' rancid, wobbly gaming tables are so big and so easy for these imposter Americans to violently steal from real Americans that these imposters can hijack those once noble American institutions of media, universities, and politics by superficially waging secret antes to them. The imposters doing this cast that mal-reciprocating, silencing, dark spell of false nobility by silence on all of these institutions. With these alienated minds and these institutions paralyzed with that false nobility by silence, also known as another form of stolen valor, these imposters are allowed to constantly get back to resuming their murderous gambling game of dealing for death in the USA's hijacked courthouses and beyond.